We're going to welcome up Sister Tomi with a round of applause for her to actually read excerpts from the prologue of her book. So welcome onto the stage.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm reading my first excerpt today. It's the prologue of the book. Here it goes. They say when you meet your soulmate, the one you are meant to spend the rest of your life with, you would know. I'm no romantic. I find rom-coms cheesy. You know how it goes. A boy walks into a room and spots a beautiful girl. She looks across at him, their eyes lock. And though they are strangers, in that moment, everything and everyone pales. And there's an inner knowing that they have met the one. I have experienced this knowing twice in my life. The first time was when I met Jacob. He walked into the room, my office to be precise. Our eyes did lock. Then he walked over to me and introduced himself, reaching out for a handshake. I obliged and responded with my name. All day I thought of him. I loved the way he spoke, how he smiled at me sheepishly, how his name rolled off his tongue, and how it rhymed with mine, Tomi Rotimi. It was poetic. 3 years later, we walked down the aisle and exchanged vows and rings. The second time was when I met Exclamations, my fashion business, the one I left a banking career for. She first showed up in it as a tunic I made for myself. It was linen. The color was midnight blue. It fitted like a glove and felt like my future. What I disliked most about being a banker was the early morning rise and the long drives to work, the manic rush, the traffic that seemed to go on for days, and everything culminating with me at a desk, not loving what I did for a living. Every workday was a chore, except Fridays, of course. On Fridays, I got to see people wear my tunics. My side hustle was making simple, easy tunics that were dressed down Friday appropriate. All the bank tellers at Apex wore my pieces, and seeing them in my colorful creations made up for the grind of the week. I woke up extra early on Fridays, even before the alarm rang. The traffic never felt as bad. Getting to work, I would rush into the banking hall and just stand there, grinning from ear to ear. It was beautiful. It was worth 2 hours of Lagos morning traffic just to see people in my designs. I knew I had found it. I'd do this for the rest of my life. Seeing people wear my designs made me experience a type of happy I didn't know existed. So I thought, what if my side hustle became my only hustle? What if I got to do this every day? It took some people a lifetime to discover their passion, but at 24, I had found mine. And I felt sad at the prospect of not exploring it. So I did. I gave myself 1 year, and after that, I resigned from banking and started my apparel label, Exclamations. And just like that, my entrepreneurial journey began at the age of 25. That was 20 years ago.
So you can actually stay where you are. So everybody, you can see that from somebody that was in an office, that was being romanced, there were then 3 good years that passed, and marriage happened, all the things. We're actually going to delve a little bit more into that story, but at this point, I'd love to also welcome up onto the stage a dear friend of Sister Tomi, and even in her own right, the founder of the Baby Cot Shop and a TEDx speaker, Tokes Aroture. Come on up, come on up. Another distinguished lady. Come and find a space on the stage. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about Toke. So she's the founder of the Baby Cot Shop, a luxury baby furniture and nursery interior design brand that is in London. Not just any London, not any old London, Chelsea. Can we have a round of applause for that? She's also become one of the leading experts in creating bespoke and elegant nurseries and became a TEDx speaker where she advocated for entrepreneurship and personal development. She also offers coaching and speaks on business growth and mindset. So we are going to delve into, I'm going to just create a little bit of space here, our first fireside chat with the ladies, where we're going to now be navigating the realms of business, motherhood, living life as a woman who is doing multiple streams and still surviving and being an inspiration to many. So ladies, I'm going to take us through the first fireside chat that we are doing right now is unlocking the story within. Unlocking the story within. Unlocking the story within. So I'm going to actually flip over to Tokes for this first question. We've all heard right now that you did a TEDx talk. You actually stepped out of your comfort zone. You went out there, you did that. What inspired you to tell your story through a TEDx platform, as opposed to books like we've seen with Sister Tomi? What made you take that step? And here you are.
Hi, everyone. So I sort of fell into talking about my story. I had an experience in 2008. I lost everything I ever owned. Lost my business, lost my livelihood, lost everything. I was living at the time in the United States with my family. At the time we had, what I would say I had 4 sons at the time. 4 sons being 3 sons and my husband, because husband is a son. And we were living a life. It was a dream. And we lost it all in the recession and came back to England, but I came back pregnant with son number 4. So I have a household of 5 sons now. And when I came back, I was obviously broken. I was ashamed. I didn't know where to put my face. Our departure from the UK to emigrate to the US was a celebratory one. You know, everyone was there to see us off at the airport, and you know, we had parties and the celebration and so on. And then I came back empty-handed and broken and ashamed and pregnant. So I began to research the UK market. My business in the US was selling luxury baby and children's furniture in a high-end part of town. I was in the state of Georgia and came back to England, began researching the market, saw that there was absolutely nothing like what we sold in the US. Had a few hiccups in trying to restart a new business here. And I was being faced with rejections like, oh, you need to have a physical location, because at the time, e-commerce was a dirty word because people associated it with eBay, which sold secondhand goods, and Amazon, which sold secondhand books. So there was a lot of pushback on how to sell the products. Anyway, I eventually set up a website, and even though it was beautifully done, I was still ashamed whenever I went for networking meetings. People asked how you got into the niche of baby furniture, and I'd weave and dive because I didn't want to have to say that I lost a business. And then one day I read an article in a magazine where someone had written 2 versions of a story of one person. The first one detailed how she failed at university, just managed to scrape through and worked as a clerk for one company, and the next job she got was as a cleaner and so on. The second story said she graduated from one of the top universities in the country, landed a job on her first day at one of the most coveted law firms, moved on to work in a publishing firm the following year, and is now, her new book was going to be out the following spring. The other one ended with she hopes to write a book one day. And the difference between the stories was that one was a sub story, which was, you know, sad and miserable, and the other one was more upbeat, which the author called the rockstar story. And I immediately rewrote my story in its rockstar version And for the first time, I felt, oh my goodness, I want to be whoever this woman is. So I memorized the story, not on purpose, but because every time I felt discouraged, I'll pick it up and I'll read it to encourage myself and say, this is who I really was. And without meaning to, I memorized it and ran into a journalist by accident, and she asked off the cuff, how did you get into this? And I said, I just told my rockstar story. And she goes, oh my gosh, calls the editor and says, we've got a good story, we've got to run it. And a double spread was done of me in one of the national newspapers in the UK. Someone must have read it, nominated me for an award. And at the award ceremony, everyone's asking, how did you get into this? And I'm like, rockstar story comes out. And I realized that by telling my rockstar story, which was not, I didn't tell only the good part of the story, was the difference. I chose to include the truth as well, because I realized that people were being inspired by the truth. So I had the option of telling the story that impressed people or telling the story that impacted people. And so that's how so TED became a natural, thank you. Thank you. TED became a natural progression from podcasts and, stages, because I was being invited to speak as well, because the tagline for TED is ideas worth spreading. And it's supposed to be an idea that is not common, that causes you to think, and something people haven't heard of before. So the idea of telling your story authentically, being a superpower, is what my talk is about.
Incredible. Can we have a round of applause? And some of the things that kind of came out of that was she was in a place of the utter lows. And what happened was there was an empowerment that came to then actually see that this is something that needs to be shared. And you could see where she flips, and she's now standing on those things and using them as a platform to share. So one of the questions that we're now going to pass to Sister Tomi is, what impact has sharing stories, so storytelling, had on your personal and professional life? What impact has that had?
It's had such an impact. When I wanted to write my first book, this is my second book actually, I was a bit unsure. First of all, I wasn't sure if my story was worth telling. I wasn't sure if it was impactful enough, special enough. But I've been in business for so many years, and in a way, I think I share my story one by one with everybody that walks through the door when I'm there. And I see how being vulnerable and the connection that is formed once somebody knows you're kind of going through what they're going through, So in writing the book, the idea was to demystify whatever it is you think I might be, whatever you think I might have achieved. I'm really just the girl next door. I'm you, you're me, we're going through this thing together, we're trying to figure it out. And the response was incredible. Everybody kind of identified with what I had gone through. In fact, it took me aback. So in writing the second story, I think I went even deeper. I got more vulnerable. And in fact, it's taken me through a journey of vulnerability across board, not just with telling my story through a book, with deepening relationships, sharing my vulnerabilities with friends. It's not enough just to share the good days or the wins. I find that when you share your struggles, of course, within reason and a safe space, with people you love and trust, that it deepens those bonds. It opens you also up to people who can support you and help you, because we all need support. There's nobody I know, no matter how much they have achieved, that doesn't need help in one way or the other. So one of the big things telling my story has done is, apart from helping me demystify myself and success and bringing me down for whatever pedestal anybody might have put me on, but it's also helped me form deep friendships. And that journey, that journey in vulnerability, that sharing my story. If there's one thing I'm grateful for, it's that. You know, a lot of people in this room are my friends, and it's really just helped me form those relationships that are now my greatest assets, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you. You have absolutely answered that question. And actually, it moves me on to another question. How did you overcome the elements that might make you not want to become as vulnerable as you need to make the type of impact you need to make?
Very slick. I confess that it has been a struggle. It didn't come naturally to me. Of course, initially, when I started to get the kind of responses that you all gave, it was a trip. Oh, well, they like this. Let's carry on. But I faced the likelihood of being judged. Now, my business, you mentioned the Baby Cut Shop. The Baby Cut Shop is a luxury baby and children's furniture brand. And my clients look absolutely nothing like I do. And so I faced struggles with that as well. Does my story align with the kind of products that I sell? And I would have imaginary questions. How dare you charge those kinds of prices when you've lost everything? And many questions like that, many incidents of self-doubt would show up. I remember one day I had a client who we had just done her nursery in Chelsea, and it was quite a large project, and we had an issue with delivery because there were a lot of things going on. And she was just calling me like, I don't care, because when you're paying that kind of money, they really almost own you. This has to be at my house by 4 o'clock. I think we were like 30 minutes off or something. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed and scared. And I sat in the car and I said, God, when am I going to stop feeling this way when things go wrong? And God said to me, the issue is that you've placed a value on what they've paid you. So they have paid you, for example, 40K for a cut or whatever it is. You don't understand that you're giving them 40K worth of products. You think that you owe them. You think they've done you a favor, and you feel smaller than you need to be. And so, but telling my story, even for now with the brand, it's something only now I've started to do because I realize that the big brands out there are trying to humanize their brands. But for us small companies, small businesses, we already have a personality, and that's an advantage. So now I'm starting to show my face more, because if you ever go onto the Baby Cut Shop Instagram, you're going to be surprised you would barely find me on there. I've created 2 very separate brands. A second reason is really because if anything were to happen to the Baby Cut Shop, I want to walk away whole. But yeah, so it has been tough, but it's just knowing that people are truly impacted by authentic storytelling. That's the one driver that's helped me. My clients are expectant moms. Many of them are first-time parents. And if you're a parent here, you know what that's like, the uncertainty that comes with motherhood, the fears, the many confusing bits of information you get. So when they come into the shop, I'm now able to be myself and say to them, I have 4 children, and this is what it felt like when I had the first son, and this is the advice I'm going to give them. I'm going to give you. One more thing is also that I realized that I had used cash as a marker for worthiness generally because I'm dealing with an affluent audience. And so I had glorified my clients more than I would, more than they needed to have been glorified, because they had multiple millions or billions. And so it's learning that, one, there are other currencies besides cash. My personality is priceless. My story is priceless. My experiences, you will not find another one like that. The advice that I give you, you're not going to get it anywhere else because it's unique to me. And these are precious gems that actually have no value. You can't, no price on them. You can't put a price on it.
Okay, so for me, it started off just being very selfish. Writing is therapeutic for me. So when I want to let go, relax, let it all out, I write, I journal. And so for the longest time, I journaled, I would write just because I love to write, and like I said, it's therapeutic. So I think when Facebook started, I started blogging on Facebook, and I was just sharing my stories, surface stories really, but stories about my business, stories about my insights, my thoughts, my experiences. And I noticed that it was getting a lot of attention. And one day, some person, I don't know who she is, I wish I could find who this person was. She sent me a message on Facebook. She said, "I love your writing, and I feel guilty reading them for free." Those were her words. I don't know who she is. I think that was the first time a seed was sown to somehow monetize my writing. But you know, she sowed that seed, and subsequently I noticed more and more people would comment about my writing and how it helped them and how it was relatable. So for me, I think sharing my story just gave me that voice, and it gave me an avenue to explore another side of myself that wasn't just, you know, Ayatomi Rotimi making clothes. You know, this was my writing, my story, my words. This was another gift that people were putting some value on. You know, so I think for me, that made it, I wouldn't say easy, but just getting that validation just allowed me to share a little bit more of my journey.
Wonderful. Can we give speakers both a round of applause? There are a few things that have come to mind from both of their sharings. One was that they both started to see the value in what they had to share. Started to look at what they took as ordinary, as actually uncommon. And then they started to look at how can this impact others. So again, we started off today looking at, you know, if everything was in the most optimal way it could be, what would we do? And this event is really for us to be inspired. They are sitting here and they are talking about their businesses because that thing that was an idea, they've had the boldness to go out, the boldness to be vulnerable, and then they've had it validated. So what both of them shared was that once they had made that step, validation came and encouraged them to carry on going. So, audience, do we have any additional questions that you want to ask? We will take maximum of 2 because we have to move on with the program. Yes. Thank you. There you are.
Well, hello. Well, I'm glad to be here. And, I'm sorry, my name is Nike Aremu. And I forgot your name. Tokes. As soon as you started speaking, I said to myself, "Self, you're in the right place," because you know why? I too just moved here from Georgia. I also own a business in Georgia. I'm currently going through that. I miss my house in Johns Creek. I lived in Johns Creek. I'm not sure where you were. But it's very inspiring to hear your story. And so I thank you for sharing. And so my question to you, along with many other questions I would like to ask off record, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you moved here to start your business? What was the not even just business, because my children are still in Atlanta and New York, but what was the biggest challenge you faced when you got here? You thought was the biggest hurdle? Not just business-wise, maybe personal, just the one thing you say to yourself, "Wow, I wish I was still in Atlanta," as we say.
So lovely to meet you. The biggest hurdle had to have been my mindset. I was afraid that I would sink into a place I wouldn't be able to come out of again. I was scared that my experience was a definition of who I now was, and I would not be able to rise above it. So that definitely was the biggest thing. But what was interesting is we spent many nights and days praying and crying and waiting for things to revert so we could go back. But the day that I accepted that this was the situation I was now in, I received a surge of energy to start again.
Amazing. And do we have one final question before we move on in the program? I can see one, yes? Brilliant. Please introduce yourself as well.
Hi, I'm Yinka. I'm actually Ayotomi's sister-in-law. It's actually not a question per se, it's a statement. One of my favorite sayings is, when you find yourself at the edge of a cliff and you're falling, God will either catch you when you fall or he'll teach you how to fly. And I think that both your stories, you were both at the edge of a cliff. You fell, Tokumbo, and he taught you how to fly. You asked God to teach you how to fly. There's a difference. My question, that was the statement that I just felt that you were both at an edge of a cliff. One fell, one didn't fall, but still needed help. My question to you, Tokumbo, is I find that when things are really bad for me, I still look at the good. And I find it really difficult to complain because I'm blessed and highly favored. How did you deal with that? Being pregnant, because that's a blessing. How did you feel knowing that you're blessed and highly favored, but down, I'm in a mess? How did you separate that, especially when you're talking to people as well? They'll say, it is well with you. Look at your husband. You have 4 children. You're doing well. So you have that, but the mind, you know that it's not well with you, so to speak. How did you deal with that?
Thank you. That's a great question. Nice to meet you. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And all our yesterdays are in God. All our todays are in God, and our tomorrows are also in God. And my faith helped me. And I confess that I came to a point where I stopped reading the Bible, and I started only reading the words of Christ in red. Because I said, I don't know what Paul drank or smoked when he was writing all those epistles, but at least I know the words of Jesus are real, so, I can trust that one. I focused a lot on those words, and I would imagine that Jesus was with me. I had a lot of anger, disappointment, pain. I thought that God was supposed to prevent these things from happening. I didn't understand that life was not a straight line. Because many of us have grown up believing that life is a straight line. It's supposed to be perfect. And then what we do is we use all of our energy trying to correct things that are not broken. And we're trying to straighten out bends that we think are meant to be straight. So learning and seeing the little blessings in those moments just reassured me that God was with me. My greatest fear in that moment was he wasn't with me, and I was doing this on my own. And that was the big thing for me was, is the Bible even true for me today? Is there any point in me continuing on this journey? And it was really just finding the little things. So I'll give an example. I built my website myself. Now you have to listen to the TED Talk because it gives you the whole story. But I built my website myself at a time when website building was rocket science, because I had gone to various web designers and I didn't have the money. And the final guy said to me, told me how much it was, £1,000. And he said, but how much would you like to pay since you're my friend's friend? I couldn't tell him £10. So I just said, I will think about it and come back to you later. But then I thought, and these are the moments when I could see God moving, was I thought about him. I thought about Patrick. On the TED Talk, I don't use Patrick. I use a different name because I don't want to be sued by an American in Texas. So I thought about him, Patrick. I thought about all the different web designers that had had anything to do with my business over the years and reached one conclusion. Not one of them was born with the ability to build websites. They had to learn, and I could learn. So I went on Google and typed in how to build a website, and I was able to do it. I believe that was God teaching me, and at the end of that I discovered that, well, if I was able to learn how to build a website, I wonder what else I could learn to do. I wonder what other hidden gems are in me and I'm completely unaware of because I haven't had the cause to reach out to grab them. And so little things like that, I was seeing God move. I saw God move in the rejections when they said to me, sorry, you need to buy stock worth of 20K or have a physical location. And God would say to me, see, when you leave that place, write down their objection and think of a comeback. So you lead, when you go to the next manufacturer, you lead with that comeback. And all these very unique ideas I was getting and we're working.
Wow. So everybody, this brings us to the conclusion of the first section of tonight. So I want for you all to take away some key things here. There were a lot of things to do with a knowing of yourself, actually seeing in all the chaos that is going on, you really are you, and there is so much to give. Above all, what are some of the adjectives you can imagine came to mind in terms of the steps these ladies took? What words come to mind listening to their stories that they had to step into? Words, adjectives, anything, shout it out. They had to be courage. What else? They had to resilient. What else? Grit, vulnerable. Anything else? Don't care. I don't care. I don't care. And anything else? Final words. Unique. The thing is, we're all unique, and that's something that we want everybody to be keeping in mind as we continue on the journey through this event. So, Tokes, at this point, we're going to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much. Round of applause.